That day at the U.S. Senate, a tense hearing unfolded when Senator Adam Schiff suddenly unleashed harsh words, bluntly calling John Kennedy a thug. But just seconds later, something no one expected happened. Kennedy's calm yet razor-sharp response turned the tables in an instant, leaving even his fiercest opponents stunned. This moment spread everywhere for entirely deserved reasons. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. The Senate Judiciary Committee hearing was expected to be a routine oversight session. Senators filed into the room, reporters crowded below the audience section, cameras constantly panning. But that day the atmosphere in the room was thick with tension, like the calm before an unseen storm. Senator John Kennedy, the Republican from Louisiana, sat upright at the table, pen in hand, eyes glinting with a mischievous spark ready to strike. Across from him was Adam Schiff, the seasoned Democratic politician from California, present as a witness to answer questions about turbulent times when he led the House Intelligence Committee. When the gavel struck to open the hearing, everything seemed set for the usual round of questioning. Kennedy asked about Schiff's role in the investigation into Russian election interference. But then the unexpected happened. Schiff leaned toward the microphone, his voice cold with a hint of disdain. Senator Kennedy, frankly, you don't deserve to be here. You're nothing but a thug disguised as a man in a suit putting on a cheap circus act. A collective gasp echoed through the room. The air seemed to freeze. Aides sat motionless, as if struck by lightning. Cameras zoomed in on Schiff's face, each word like a heavy blow, creating a dramatic and unexpected scene right in the heart of the Senate. Kennedy didn't flinch. He tilted his head, a smirk forming like a hunter calmly sizing up his prey before striking. The room fell silent, time seeming to stand still for 5-10 seconds. Then he leaned toward the microphone, his warm Louisiana drawl cutting like a blade. Senator Schiff, you call me a thug in Louisiana. That's a compliment if it comes from someone obsessed with chasing Russian ghosts, while your constituents struggle to survive under bridges in Oakland. His gaze swept the room, each word like a flame scorching the silence. You who've sat in Congress for decades while California drowns in homelessness. You who've preached about democracy on TV while veterans in your state can't even get a decent meal. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. A pen dropped to the floor, its sound echoing loud enough for all to hear. Schiff shifted slightly, his face betraying clear discomfort and irritation. Kennedy lowered his voice, each word landing like an undeniable blow. You have no right to call me a thug, not when you sit there preaching about justice while tens of thousands of Californians live in tents in Oakland's children grow up without a shred of hope. Schiff's face paled, attempting to interject, but the chair immediately raised a hand. Let him continue. Kennedy placed a file on the table, opening it slowly as if unveiling the truth page by page. This is a public report, but it seems to have been forgotten for too long. It shows that when Oakland pleaded for federal funding to address the homelessness crisis, you didn't lift a finger to help. Gasps of astonishment rippled through the room. You claim you're protecting the nation from Russia. Meanwhile, over 60,000 people in your state live on the streets. Schiff clenched his fists, trying to hide his discomfort. Kennedy pressed on, his voice unwavering. That's not all. Public records from your House Intelligence Committee show senior officials denying direct evidence of collusion between Trump and Russia, yet you went on TV insisting you had proof, stirring up chaos nationwide. A young woman in the audience who had once sent a plea for help to Schiff gripped the armrest tightly. A reporter whispered, "That was a heavy hit." Kennedy softened his tone almost a whisper. Call me whatever you want, Senator Schiff, but today the people will see your true face. Kennedy held up a crumpled letter with a faded postmark. This is a letter from Sarah, a single mother in Oakland, sent to your office twice begging for help for her son. Not a single reply. Murmurs grew louder. One of Schiff's aides bowed their head, avoiding eye contact. You call me a thug, Kennedy said, staring directly at Schiff. But a thug doesn't abandon the people they promise to protect. They don't hide behind flowery speeches while Oakland's families struggle day after day. But a thug doesn't hide behind speeches to abandon the very people they swore to protect. They don't pretend to be noble while turning their backs on struggling citizens. Kennedy said, his voice sharp as a razor. Schiff reached for the microphone but couldn't muster a word. Kennedy continued, his tone firmer. I'm here to speak the truth, not to be insulted, and I won't stay silent when you dismiss hard-working Americans with empty rhetoric and indifference. Reporters rushed out to file breaking news within minutes. The video of Kennedy's response flooded social media platforms. A teenager in Oakland watching the clip on their phone choked up and said, "He's speaking for my mom." On cable news, the confrontation quickly became the focal point. Fox News called it a pinnacle Senate showdown, while CNN described it as a shocking, unforgettable moment. But inside the Senate chamber, Kennedy remained utterly composed, as if unaware of the tidal wave of emotions surging outside. He calmly placed another set of documents on the table. This file proves that federal relief funds for Oakland's small businesses were redirected right after a call from Senator Schiff's office. Schiff shifted His face visibly shaken. In the second row, a man who had sent countless unanswered pleas to Schiff couldn't hold back tears streaming down his cheeks today. Kennedy spoke the words that the people here have longed to hear for so long. The people of your state placed their full trust in you. Kennedy said, his voice tinged with emotion like the sigh of someone carrying an invisible burden. Resilient mothers line up for hours to receive food rations while you appear on television preaching about democracy and justice. That's not leadership, that's betrayal. Schiff sat in silence, lips pursed tightly, unable to find a response. Then Kennedy delivered a statement that left the room utterly still. Senator, this isn't personal, this is real pain. I grew up in Louisiana, where people know what it's like to struggle every day when you turn your back on your own people just to chase the spotlight. Who will stand up and speak for them? A young reporter in the audience who had lived in Oakland couldn't hold back tears, whispering into a still, active microphone, "I never thought a Republican could move me like this." Kennedy turned to the audience, his gaze deeper and more sincere than ever. This isn't just about Washington, this is about the mothers in Oakland who have to bury their children while the leaders they elected are busy boasting on television. His words rang out slowly, each sentence clear and deeply personal. In Louisiana, I've seen families struggle every day for a single meal. No one called to check on them, no one cared. And now when I see that same pain still present in the neighborhoods you claim to represent, Senator Schiff, I have to ask you, what have you done for them all these years? Schiff blinked rapidly, lips tightly closed. Kennedy pulled out a handwritten letter from an 11-year-old girl named Sarah who had written to Schiff's office twice begging for help to get her grandmother a decent place to live. No one responded. Kennedy read the letter aloud, describing a roach-infested home, no hot water, and a sickly grandmother unable to climb stairs. When he finished, half the room quietly wiped away tears. I came here today, Kennedy said, for Sarah. Schiff tried to stay composed, his voice trembling as if on the verge of losing control. Senator Kennedy, this is just political theater. You're exploiting children's stories to smear me. But Kennedy didn't let him finish. He swiftly pulled a photo from his sleeve, holding it up for all to see, an image of Schiff at a San Francisco event praising criminal justice reform efforts. What few know, Kennedy said, his voice commanding, is that same year over 60% of Oakland's affordable housing funds were transferred to out-of-state investors, not to local residents. The screen behind him lit up, displaying a series of reports, emails, and statistics about California's homelessness crisis, all revealing Schiff's shocking indifference to the people he represented. A young aide of Schiff's, trembling, dropped a file and hurriedly rushed out. Kennedy lowered his voice, each word like an undeniable verdict. You didn't just fail your people, you abandoned them. You stood on their pain to build your own glory. He paused, taking a deep breath, his gaze stern yet utterly sincere. I don't enjoy doing this. This isn't revenge, this is facing the truth. Turning to the chair, he requested, I ask that the public reports from Oakland organizations clearly showing Senator Schiff's office ignored hundreds of pleas from constituents about housing and jobs be entered into the hearing record. The chair nodded in agreement. Immediately on the screen, a shocking report appeared. Dozens of calls from the community were forwarded straight to an unchecked voicemail. Schiff sat there, shoulders slumped, eyes vacant, as if realizing just how deeply he had failed. Kennedy looked toward the audience. If this is the model of representation, then our people deserve better, our country deserves better. Then, unexpectedly, he looked directly at Schiff and said, I hold no grudge, Senator, because this isn't about grudges, it's about the truth. And the truth begins when the lies leave the room. Echoed with soft applause mingled with stifled sobs. A quiet but powerful shift had taken place, not out of hatred but out of truth. And the truth begins when the lies are exposed, Kennedy said, his voice low but full of strength. The room resonated with soft applause mixed with quiet sobs. A subtle but profound transformation had occurred outside the hearing room at a community center in Oakland. Veterans and homeless residents gathered around an old TV connected to a tablet. When Kennedy reread Sarah's letter, a 78-year-old woman named Clara, living on meager benefits, burst into tears. That little girl lives in my neighborhood, she whispered, clutching her chest. A man stood up, voice choked. Schiff abandoned us long ago. The video reached the streets that needed it most. Kennedy's words were not just politics, they carried real pain. Back in the hearing room, Schiff remained silent, his eyes pensive, his gaze searching for a way to hold himself together against the tidal wave. Aides whispered anxiously, lawyers tensed, and the Democratic senators on the opposite day is unexpectedly fell eerily quiet. Kennedy continued, his voice deep and resolute, this isn't just a partisan fight, this is the pain of forgotten people, a pain that spans generations, and today it has finally been given a voice. He stood, adjusted his suit jacket, and placed a hand on the table as if to remind himself, I'm not a polished man, not born into wealth or elite schools. I'm a Louisiana raised among people fighting poverty, watching my family struggle for every meal. The room seemed to hold its breath. When you call me a thug, I understand what you mean. You're not calling me a criminal, you're talking about the cry of poverty, you're talking about honest working People, you say I don't belong here where my mother prayed I'd reach. A young senator who once doubted Kennedy bowed his head to the table. Another female colleague gripped her pen so tightly it snapped in half. I stand here today, a United States senator, not because of corruption or power, but because I never stopped trying even when the world said I didn't belong here. The audience was hushed, many with tears in their eyes. So no, Senator Schiff, I'm not a thug. I am the voice of every person you've forgotten. Schiff reached for the microphone, his hand trembling slightly, the initial confidence seeming to vanish in the wind. But before he could speak, Kennedy cut in, his voice gentle but sharp as a blade. Don't speak yet, sir. Just one question. When was the last time you walked Oakland streets without cameras trailing you? When was the last time you sat with a homeless person without a speech in hand? The question was like a razor-sharp dagger piercing through the hypocrisy and distance of power. Schiff fell silent. He couldn't answer. Kennedy placed a photo before Schiff taken at a memorial for a teenager named Jamal shot dead in a shooting in Oakland. Schiff had promised reform, but nothing changed. You forgot him, Kennedy said, not with anger but with deep regret. But his mother hasn't forgotten you. The cameras captured Schiff stunned, silent, and for the first time visibly ashamed. When the hearing paused, the hallway overflowed with reporters, aides, and a stunned audience. Did Kennedy just dismantle Schiff's entire career without raising his voice? A Senate staffer whispered. An NBC reporter stood frozen, replaying the clip on their phone. Even political opponents were moved not by scandal but by truth. In a break room, two former Schiff aides sat quietly, eyes red. One, a young man named Marcus, spoke up. Everything, Kennedy said. We saw it. I used to believe in him, the other replied, until we were told not to answer letters from the slums because they didn't matter. Kennedy sat alone at his table, leafing through letters from Oakland and San Francisco. His hand trembled slightly, not from fear but from the weight of those pains. The break ended, and Schiff re-entered slowly, eyes downcast. The chair granted Kennedy the final word. I know some today thought this would be routine politics, a debate. It's not. He turned to Schiff, his voice softer. This is a reckoning. He held up the final document. This report shows over $3 million in housing repair funds for Oakland and San Francisco went missing while those homes were overrun with mold leaks and unsafe conditions. He didn't shout, but his words struck like blows to the heart. This information came from a whistleblower, someone who once believed in you. A man in the audience gasped. A contractor who had tried to fix those homes but was pushed aside. Schiff began to tremble. Schiff stood, his voice faltering. This is a personal attack. This is an attempt to smear a senator serving the country. Kennedy shook his head lightly. No, sir, this isn't about attacking you. This is about restoring dignity to the people you promised to protect, Kennedy said, stepping closer to Schiff, not with anger, but with composure. Power, not reputation, has made you indifferent. Power without humility destroys everything it touches. A few senators bowed their heads. If this hearing were just political theater, sir, I wouldn't be standing here. But it's not. It's the truth, and the truth doesn't care about titles. Schiff blinked, his eyes welling with tears but quickly turning away as if unwilling to let anyone see that rare moment of vulnerability. Kennedy gently placed the letter from a girl named Sarah next to Schiff's microphone, his voice low but firm. You never answered her. Perhaps now you'll have to listen. The room sank into a profound, heavy silence so thick that each breath seemed to echo like a painful sigh. Outside, across the nation, the hearts of ordinary people were breaking, not for the fall of an individual, but because someone had finally dared to stand up and speak for the forgotten and abandoned. Kennedy slowly scanned the room, his gaze touching each person as if conveying the deepest message. I didn't come here for revenge. I didn't come to smear anyone. I came here for the people who placed their trust in you. They deserve answers. He turned to the audience, his voice suddenly soft and full of emotion. Today in this room there is a woman named Mrs. Ellen Carter. She's 68 years old. Her roof collapsed last winter during a prolonged freeze and bone-chilling winds. The camera panned to an elderly woman in the third row, quietly wiping tears from her wrinkled cheeks, her face a mix of exhaustion and resilience. She called the senator's office 7 times, and 7 times no one called back. She traveled here from Oakland on a borrowed bus ticket just to stand here to see us and to be heard. Kennedy's voice trembled, slightly quiet, like the pain that Mrs. Ellen and countless others endured. She didn't ask for wealth, didn't ask for privilege, only for a safe home to live with dignity, things you promised when she voted for you. Schiff kept his head down, his gaze pensive, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Kennedy leaned forward one last time, opening a small black notebook, its worn pages filled with trembling handwritten notes full of heartfelt pleas. This isn't evidence to attack anyone, he said, his voice low and hoarse as if speaking to himself. These are letters, messages, bitter cries from people who once trusted and were ultimately abandoned. He raised the notebook high, his hands slightly trembling but his gaze resolute. They trusted you, Senator Schiff. They believed in your promises, but in return they got only cold silence, makeshift tent cities, and broken promises like early season rain. Schiff finally looked up, his face expressionless, as if every ounce of vitality had been drained from him. A reporter whispered, voice choked. Say something, sir. But Schiff remained silent, and in that silence there was a wordless message more powerful than any defense or explanation. The room seemed to sink into an endless moment where politics and power suddenly felt small before the weight of truth in human hearts. The audience rose to their feet, applauding with a low but powerful resonance. Kennedy didn't smile, he whispered, "They matter, not me, they do." In decades Schiff had controlled the narrative, but in a single morning Kennedy handed it back to the people. The chair noted the time. "Senator Kennedy, you've made your point clearly. The hearing is nearing its close." Kennedy nodded, then looked at Schiff one last time. "I didn't come to destroy your career, sir. That was your choice. I just turned on the light." Schiff blinked rapidly, then lowered his head as Kennedy left the room. Reporters stood maintaining a respectful silence in the hallway. Mrs. Ellen Carter grasped his hand, whispering, "Thank you for seeing us." Kennedy, once mocked as a thug in a suit, stepped into history as a bearer of justice through truth, not anger. In a nearby meeting room, young congressional interns watched the live feed. One whispered, "I thought Kennedy was just a loud voice, but today he was different," another said. "He didn't defend himself with pride, he defended the people with their pain." Clips of his speech flooded social media. Veterans in San Francisco, single mothers in Chicago, workers in Ohio all said, "He spoke for us." In Louisiana, a retired farmer murmured, "This man, he understands." On MSNBC, the clip hit 10 million views in under 2 hours. A veteran editor muttered, "There's never been a hearing like this." Fox ran the headlines, "Senator John Kennedy exposes decades of silence with one day of truth." Even channels critical of Kennedy couldn't look away. On a talk show, a liberal host wiped their eyes, saying, "I don't agree with his views, but today he wasn't a politician, he was a voice for the broken." Kennedy stepped outside to meet the people, including Sarah holding a crumpled photo of her grandmother. He knelt down, hugged her, and whispered, "You matter, I hear you." The image spread across the internet. Schiff's office was shrouded in silence, phones ringing incessantly, staff avoiding cameras. Damage was clear. That night, families across the United States re-watched the C-SPAN recording, not for politics, but for the haunting human truth. An elderly man in Tennessee told his grandson, "He's no thug, he's a warrior, not with fists but with heart." In Oakland Church, a pastor quoted Kennedy, "Power without humility destroys everything it touches." Decades of Schiff's control crumbled under the weight of unassailable truth. Kennedy didn't celebrate. He returned to his room, opened a book, and sat quietly, knowing this wasn't about victory, it was about awakening people. Before leaving the Capitol, Kennedy paused, looking back at the now empty hearing room. Faint light filtered through the windows, reflecting on the bare table where the microphone still stood. He gently placed an envelope there, not legal documents or cold numbers, but a heartfelt letter he had scribbled during the break, filled with his most sincere and candid words. In that letter, Kennedy wrote, "You could have been a beacon in the darkness, a giant in politics, but you chose ease over sacrifice, fame over mission. It's not too late to start again with the truth." An aide witnessing this moment, eyes wide with respect, was speechless. The next morning, headlines blazed across every media screen. Moment that shook Washington. Kennedy confronts Schiff with truth, thug or hero. Americans decide in Oakland, San Francisco, Richmond. The atmosphere was unlike any ordinary day. People gathered not to protest, but to listen, to share their own stories. Churches opened their doors, community centers overflowed. A mother, hands trembling, played Kennedy's speech on her phone, tears streaming down. He didn't yell, didn't curse, he just spoke, and I felt every word as if it were my own heart speaking. Meanwhile, Senator Schiff's office remained eerily silent, with no statements or responses. In contrast, Kennedy's inbox overflowed with letters, stories brimming with pain and hope. By midday, it was clear this was no ordinary political moment. It was a profound shift in culture, in the souls of those long forgotten. On podcasts, teachers, students, and radio hosts quoted Kennedy with deep empathy. Power without humility destroys everything it touches. In a small classroom in the heart of Oakland, a student whispered to a friend, "I wish my dad could have heard this." The letter, Kennedy's words, were like a smoldering ember, igniting, awakening millions of weary hearts. President Trump addressed the nation. What Senator Kennedy did yesterday wasn't politics, it was action for the people. Schiff finally appeared before the cameras, his voice low. "I have no comment at this time," he said, pausing as he noticed a reporter holding Kennedy's letter. He bowed his head. The damage was clear, but the truth had entered and refused to leave. In Oakland, an emergency church meeting drew over 300 people. Laura, a former Schiff campaigner, held a photo of her son killed in a shooting. "I begged him for funding to clean up the neighborhood. He said he'd take care of it. That was ages ago." Someone played Kennedy's words, "You chose ease over sacrifice, fame over mission." The room broke into tears, not for politics, but 4 years of broken promises. Schiff's office remained locked, offering no answers. Oakland's people spoke out, not with violence, but with stories. A sealed envelope reached the Oversight Committee containing leaked documents, internal emails, hidden homelessness statistics, and a recording of an aide saying, The people will vote for him anyway, just distract them. The recording aired on television. The nation shuddered. Kennedy returned to the hearing room at the chair's invitation. The room was now deathly silent, all eyes fixed on him, and Schiff's chair remained empty. Kennedy looked directly at that void, his voice gentle but resolute. I've been called a thug, but the truth is I've never abandoned anyone, never promised what I couldn't keep. I don't have decades of political experience like him, but I have the tears and voices of the forgotten, he whispered, his voice choked but steadfast. And I won't let those tears fall in vain. The room fell utterly still. Then one by one people stood. No loud applause, but a quiet understanding, a wordless yet immensely powerful strength. The Democratic Senator Lisa Monroe from the opposite bench stood with red eyes and a trembling voice. I'm not here to praise Senator Kennedy or to polish anyone's politics. What he did transcends those calculations. This is real pain, the pain of millions of people we've sometimes forgotten. While chasing power games as a public servant, I too have forgotten that pain. Party lines seemed to dissolve in that moment. The hearing chair, voice heavy with emotion, said solemnly, "Today we didn't witness a political victory, we witnessed a victory of conscience and morality." Within 24 hours, murals appeared across Louisiana streets quoting Kennedy. "You may hold power, but we, the ones carrying pain, know that pain outlasts all politics." In Oakland, a group of teens painted that mural on a community center wall, a vivid reminder of the resilience of the forgotten. Investigative agencies began reviewing the documents. Kennedy made public, undeniable accusations of governmental indifference. A former close aide of Schiff appeared on television, eyes admitting, "We stopped serving the people long ago." No one dared speak up until John Kennedy did. Social media erupted, spreading thousands of stories from Louisiana to California. For the first time, people felt their voices were heard. Kennedy couldn't save an entire community, but he saw them, and that alone was enough to spark hope, to make ordinary people feel their value and dignity again. That night, as the clamor subsided, Kennedy sat alone in a small room. A dim yellow light illuminating his pensive face. Before him was a small, unaddressed note in familiar handwriting. "I don't expect forgiveness, but now I understand. I'm sorry." A seed not in triumph, but in a profound peace of the soul, the peace that comes from acknowledgement and the courage to face the truth. He issued a final statement to the press. "I didn't come to Washington to argue, I came to speak the truth. If that truth brings hope, even to one child, one elder, one broken family, it was worth it." I was called a thug, but I responded as a human, and sometimes that's the greatest strength. The story of Senator John Kennedy confronting Adam Schiff in the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing reflects pressing issues in American society today: the disconnect between leaders and the people, the crisis of trust in politics, and the power of truth. Through Kennedy's exposure of Schiff's indifference to Oakland's homeless and unfulfilled promises to people like Sarah or Mrs. Ellen Carter, the story underscores that power without responsibility leads to community suffering. Sarah's letter, the dilapidated homes in Oakland, and Mrs. Clara's tears at the community center symbolize the forgotten, those abandoned by the political system. Kennedy, with his witty yet incisive style, not only challenged Schiff, but also ignited hope by turning on the light to the truth. As he said, rather than seeking revenge, the lesson from this story for every American in real life is dare to speak up and act for justice. Even when facing power like Kennedy, we don't need grand titles to make change. A letter, a call, or a story shared on social media can awaken a community. Learn from Mrs. Ellen Carter, who overcame hardship to attend the hearing, to be heard. That persistence and presence can change the narrative. Ultimately, as Kennedy emphasized, truth and dignity are the foundation of a just society. In daily life, listen to people like Sarah, support your neighbors, and prioritize responsibility over fame. That's how we rebuild trust and heal America's wounds today. Stay tuned to spread the truth and honor voices like Sarah and Mrs. Ellen Carter. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video to continue the journey for justice.